This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News. News-free Dixie for the 21st century.
Good afternoon, everybody. How y'all feeling today? I'm feeling good too. Give yourselves a round of applause for making another marathon of information overload. I really appreciate it. Give my mom, Sister Callie Hurd, another round of applause for helping the district pull this off. A lot of people say that it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. Well, I'm going to have this online anyway, so it's been amplified many times over. Give it up to YouTube and the internet. Yeah. All right, let's try to lighten the mood here. This is a very important part of the program. I am very honored, humbled, and esteemed to be standing before you all to share the good news today. This is great news, good news today. I can't say enough about this gentleman I'm about to introduce today. This is National Jazz Appreciation Month. In the words of the late, great Duke Ellington, this brother is truly beyond category, I would say, bar none. It was funny because I got home late last night. I was going through the cable channel, and something came on called Beat Street. I'm dating myself a little bit. Not really, I was 4 years old when it came out. Really dating myself. But Beat Street, and this guy, like him and Dick Gregory, I know very well. Every time I'm looking at TV or listening to radio, somehow their influence has been amplified. The brother I'm talking about is a true visionary. He is both an outlier, read Malcolm Gladwell about that, and also an inside man. He is arguably one of the unsung fathers of hip-hop culture. I didn't say rap music, I didn't say pop. I said one of the unsung fathers of hip-hop culture. He is actually the father of hip-hop TV. He produced and hosts the first hip-hop TV program in the history of the world. This is before they let anybody black on MTV besides Michael Jackson and maybe Prince. So he did this in the early 80s, right? He set the groundwork for what was to come with the VH1s, with the BET, used to be 106 in Parks and things of this nature. This guy had the forethought to do that back in 1984. And he laid the groundwork for what was to come. He had the pleasure with Treaty Rock, introduced the world to people like Run DMC, Kool Moe Dee and the Treacherous Three, and also the world-class, world-famous NYC Breakers, the breakdance group which he also managed. And not only that, he called himself an urban anthropologist. In my book, he's a true Renaissance man as well. Well, he was also the best friend of the one and only Jean-Michel Basquiat. I don't know if y'all know who he is. I can Google him on your smartphones. But Jean-Michel Basquiat is one of the greatest best-selling artists, the most influential artists of the 20th century, but also one of the greatest selling artists of all time. Recently, one of his works went for $60 million. That's $60 million, folks. The dollar's still worth something. So that's $60 million big ones. But not only that, but also he was a collaborator with Jean-Michel Basquiat. They started to be very influential and innovative noise band Great back in the 80s. And also, he's a painter in his own right, great work. What more can I say about this guy? He also paid a big tribute to his great friend. Jean-Michel died at the young age of 27 years old, August 12, 1988. And so he did the greatest tribute one could do to their friends by memorializing him for all time in the screenplay in the movie known as Basquiat, which is a cult classic now. If you go to any art school in the world, if you got any young artist today, what's one of their top 5 favorite movies of all time, they might say that movie, Basquiat. And also, he starred with the real life Jean-Michel in Downtown 81. He also contributed to the soundtrack. So without further ado, are you ready?
Yeah.
Are y'all ready?
Yeah.
Are y'all really ready?
Yeah.
You really want it? Do you really want it?
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's get ready to roll. Coming to the stage today is the one and only brother Money Mike Holman.
Thank you very much. I need some Ronnie Piper to fight with right now, wrestling guy. It's funny. I got here from New York yesterday afternoon, getting my speech together. Worked all last night, drinking coffee, getting all buzzed, and staying up and writing this out and being very careful and prescribed and wanting to say the right thing to the young people here, to the older people who want to go back to college, to people with special needs, etc., etc. And having gone through the experience today and hearing everyone speak, such eloquent speakers, such knowledgeable people, such compassionate people, and especially the gentleman, the attorney who just spoke before me, I was inspired just sitting there, talk about being spontaneous. I was inspired to kind of go off script a little bit and tell you a story that happened to me. I also am a professor, as Ron mentioned. I wrote the screenplay to the film Basquiat. I'm a screenwriter and a playwright, and I teach screenwriting. I taught at Howard University for many years, and now I teach at City College in New York, etc. Well, last semester was my first semester at City College. And I teach a media course. It's kind of a gateway class you have to take in order to move on into whether you take advertising courses, public relation courses, etc., specifically in that world. And I'm kind of like Ron, if you guys know Ron. I'm kind of like a bit of a political activist, an armchair anthropologist, somebody who likes to stir up a lot of trouble through telling the truth. And I try to compete with Ron. He's hard to keep up with. But I think I beat him on this one situation. In this class, even though I'm supposed to talk about social media and I'm supposed to talk about different things like that, I use it as an opportunity to talk to my students who are white, black, East Indian, Chicano, Latino, Caribbean Latino, etc. I sort of try to use it as an excuse or an opportunity to tell them the truth as I know it. And like the gentleman, the attorney, I just turned 60 years old a couple of months ago, and I've had experience. I've lived a few years, and I've seen a lot of things. And in situations like this, in events like this, you'll always hear, we as black people will always hear, as we attempt to create something special for our children, for ourselves, we'll always hear these kind of sidebars that talk about the particular struggle that we go through in this country daily and for centuries, right? And it always alludes to the man, the white man, the establishment, et cetera, et cetera. And many of the things that we talked about today and we heard today, especially again a few moments ago, we always knew that we were sort of behind the 8 ball as a people in this country. We always knew that our role in this country was that of the underdog, and that is a euphemism, that's an understatement. But there's, for me, as an armchair anthropologist, meaning I just love to understand why people do the things they do. I like to understand why people do the things they do in groups and in certain cultures and certain parts of the world. You know, why do people behave this way? Why are they motivated this way versus that way? Why do civilizations evolve in this direction versus that direction? And in this class, I talk a lot, I say, I want you guys to study media as it affects human evolution. How did we evolve in partnership with different kinds of media? And, you know, sitting around a campfire in Paleolithic times, in ancient times, telling stories to each other, that was media. That was social media at one time, right? Greek theater was another form of media. The newspaper, the first Gutenberg Bible was a form of early media. And so I like to talk about evolution, and I like to inject my own particular point of view, especially about myself and about my people, black people in this country and in the world, into the classroom, our experience. And so I talked about the Ku Klux Klan and how it was created, and it's not exactly what you think it is. And I talk about the unions that came about in the turn of the last century, and I talk about all these different things that involve power and money. And one day a student, because of me, and I told you guys this earlier today, that I've learned a lot more than I think I've ever taught anybody by being a teacher. I've learned so much, and that happened for me last semester. A student said, well, Professor Holman, I think you might really like this. He brought in someone's, probably a doctorate dissertation. I didn't see the name on who wrote this particular piece of history, but I know it must have been some sort of high academic dissertation. Someone was writing either for a master's degree or a PhD degree on American history. And what it was about, it shocked me. It was so, the truth, I'd never heard or read the truth so clearly about my people, about black people in this country before in my life. I've never read something that explained who we are and why we are in this situation in this country so clearly. It had to do with a white man in the 1600s in Virginia, Jamestown, one of the first Anglo-Saxon colonies in this country, in Virginia, Jamestown. There was probably only a couple hundred people living there. A lot of people were dying from disease. It was very frontier time. But the main reason for this colony was to grow tobacco. Tobacco was the cash crop like you cannot believe. Tobacco was so popular in Europe that all of the gentry of Europe, the wealthy sons of the most powerful men, especially in Great Britain, would come to America and grow tobacco. And they used slaves to grow the tobacco, but they also used free people. They used indentured servants. They had indentured Irish who were really ostensibly slaves. They had poor whites. They had free blacks. They had black slaves. It wasn't a huge population. It was kind of mixed up. And believe it or not, during that time, race was not what it is today. We did not see race then the way we see it now. Okay? It was much more about class. And what was important was that they picked that tobacco and sent it back to Europe to make that money. And what happened was was that many of these, and by the way, there were black people who were married to white people, who had mulatto children, there were poor whites and poor blacks working side by side picking this tobacco. It really wasn't about race and color the way we understand it now. There wasn't this powerful enmity, this powerful animosity between the races. And what happened was, the poor people wanted more tobacco land to grow their crops, to compete with the wealthier people who had these large plantations near the coast. They were saying, oh, you poor people, you have your plantations up in the mountains and up in the hills. But don't mess with the Indians because we use their fur and we trade their fur and tobacco and we send it back to Europe and we make oodles and oodles of money. So don't mess with the Indians. But they were like, we want the Indians' land. Those poor whites, some poor blacks, slaves, whatever, they were kind of a motley crew. And they said, we want better opportunities to grow this tobacco. The gentry class, the wealthy class said no, and it started a revolution. It started by a young man, by a gentleman named Bacon, a white man named Bacon, middle class. And he brought together a motley crew of blacks, whites, slaves, free people. It was maybe a couple of hundred. And they wanted better tobacco growing land. And they attacked the gentry, they attacked the wealthy, and they almost wiped them out. They almost killed all of them. This is something we don't hear about. I'm sitting there reading this going like, why don't I know this? They nearly wiped out all of the powerful English. This wasn't America. Virginia wasn't America. It was England. They almost wiped them out. They had to fight them back with the army. They had to do everything they could, but they realized we can't let that happen again. We cannot let this kind of rebellion happen again. It was the first rebellion in America. So they said, what do we do? Well, when the Romans took over England, they taught us something very important. When Hadrian came to 2,000 years ago, took over Great Britain and divided all those people, they taught the English that you divide and conquer. You divide and conquer. That's how you get your way with people. And so the gentry classes, they said, we're going to give you this land. We don't want you to come over and try to kill us anymore. We want you to be happy and grow your tobacco and do all that stuff. We get the idea. We got the memo. We got the message. You're going to hang us and tear us apart. We don't want that anymore. So what we want to do is we need to divide and conquer this motley crew, these revolutionaries of blacks and whites, intermarried, working together, growing crops together. And they started creating laws that said, any black man that raises a hand against a white man will be punished. And any white man who raises a hand against a black man will not be punished. Any white man can take a black man's land. No blacks and whites can ever marry again. You can never have children again. They created all these laws that the essence of these laws was basically to engender within white people a contempt for us. First, they felt sorry for us because, wow, we can get away with taking your land, we can rape your women and not even be punished for it, we can enslave you in any way we want, and we're not going to be punished for it? Wow, we got a real advantage here. But in the end of the day, the whole point was to make them feel sorry for us first and then hate us. And the bottom line, the reason they did this, wasn't about race. They didn't care about race and things like that back then. They cared about one thing and one thing only: to maintain that 1%. To maintain the super wealthy, and everybody else is at each other's throats. And you see it today. You see it in Ferguson. You see it in New York. You see it in South Carolina. You see it everywhere. The model is, we think it's about race. And on the surface it is. But underneath, it's about maintaining that 1% wealth so that they can have another, boat that's another 20 feet longer than the one they had before. Useless, crazy greed. And when I read this document, it was one of those light bulbs went off in my head. Like all the things that I tried to understand about race, like why do they hate us and why is it so important to them to destroy us? Why is it so important to them that we don't love ourselves? Why is this happening? It just seems so bizarre. And when I read this, I'm 60 years old, up until my 59th and a half year, I really didn't have the answer until I read this document, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's about money. It's about greed. They want, and we all know what greed is. We all know what money is. We all know what that feels like, wanting that comfort, wanting that material wealth. But there are people that have so much of it that they become diseased. And it's actually the foundation of everything we understand in this country for the last 400 years. Our country was built on this idea of absolute profit at any expense. Get that tobacco back to Europe. If we have to divide the races, we'll do it so that they don't rise up again and hurt the wealthier growers. And now, everything that we're going through, kids getting shot. Last night here in Memphis, by a drive-by, young girl doesn't even wake up the next day. You know what I'm talking. This happens all over the country. The way we hate ourselves, the way we treat ourselves, it's all been applied in order to make money. And the reason why I brought this up, and I wasn't even going to begin to talk about this, nothing to do with what I've got written here, but I'll tell you what it does have to do with. And it's a question. Are you going to let a 400-year-old conspiracy, if you will, to simply make more money than they did the day before by keeping the working class at each other's throats, are you going to let that conspiracy, that design, stop your life? Mess with your life, with your future? I mean, I'm telling you, it felt like this slap in the face, but also it felt like a real door was opened. Talk about knowledge. This was this bacon revolution. You can find it. Go on Google right now. Get it on your phone right now. The bacon revolution. It's right there in Wikipedia. It's in Wikipedia, right alongside lynch. The guys that the name lynching came from. Who came up with? It was a white English planter in Jamaica who came up with the paradigm of how to destroy us and how to humiliate the black man in front of the black woman, and how to destroy our family structure. His name was Lynch, and lynching was named after him. I'm telling you, it's important, and what I want to talk quickly and change gears of what I initially was going to talk about, and I will soon, but it hit me last semester, like I said. I felt like, wow, all of this hatred, all of this loss of life, all of this division and loss of potential over the last 400 years was simply so that the fat cats could be richer. I mean, I believe it because you see what people will do for money, don't you? You see what people will do to their own mother for $1. So the idea that they would destroy us, some strangers from a strange land, is not surprising. But I never knew the real story. And I think that's it. That bacon revolution was it. It was I mean, there's a lot of beauty that's come out of our oppression. There's a lot of genius. I mean, sometimes pressure makes the diamond. And we are the diamond that came from 400 years of oppression. And we've come, I mean, and it's amazing to me, the beauty that we create. It's amazing to me, the beauty that we are in spite of it all. But can you imagine? All of this is because, all of the pain that we felt is all because of a couple of hundred people getting richer on tobacco specifically. It's crazy. It's crazy. So I just had to leave you with that. Now, quickly to what I want to talk about. Before I came down here, I was talking to a good friend of mine named Rich Nice, who's a big producer, especially in the 90s. He and Sway, who has a show on MTV now, anybody know who Sway is? And Commissioner Gordon, they were the wrecking crew in the 90s. They produced everybody from Mariah Carey to Jay-Z to Nas. I mean, they produced everybody. And so he's not as big as he was anymore, but he's still in the game, and he's actually producing an album, Gray's second album, and he's a big fan of my music because I was in a band with Basquiat, so that was actually a benefit for me, that association. So now I'm working with Rich Nice, and I told him about my trip, and I'm coming down here to speak. And he said, tell him something for me. Rich Nice, brother from Harlem, whose family is originally from the Caribbean. And I told him what this talk was about, going to college, and he said, remind him something from me. I want you to tell him something from me. And so I'm sharing this with you. He said, the days of the guilds and the apprenticeships and learning on the job, he said, all those days are over. They're over. If you want a job in almost any field, any decent job, he said, and he's a professor too, by the way, he said, you don't have a college degree, you don't have a chance. Now, I know part of the message here is that it's not only just about going to college, but it's also about entrepreneurship, and I want to talk about that too for a moment. But he stressed that, and I was like, wow, really? He said, yeah, dude, seriously. You want a job, and you want to compete. He says, if it's between you and somebody who has a degree, and it's going to be, and you don't have a degree, guess who's getting the job? Guess who's getting the job? Trust me. And so, as I was thinking about that and talking to Callie, who is such a generous woman, and she's hiring me to come down and speak, but I'm talking, how about if I say this? How about oh yeah, try and say it. And we're going back and forth. And it occurs to me that what Rich Nice said was true, but that's not enough to just say it. I don't want to come up and say that. I want to give it a solution. I want an answer. I want to give you like something to work on. And so what occurred to me was that whenever you have some kind of challenge, whether you be someone with a felon who's trying to get a degree, trying to find a way to get to college, a high school student now who may be starting a little too late in terms of applications and whatnot, someone with special needs, an older individual who maybe wants to go back to college, what do you do? Give me a solution. Don't just talk about it. Give me a solution. And so I thought, well, if you have a problem in life, what do you do? I mean, human beings are instinctively, naturally, we've always been we're very social creatures. We're very much about joining in groups for inspiration, for protection, for sustenance, for love. And so I thought, maybe this is about groups joining together in common cause. And some things to me, some ideas came to my head, like, what if you had a drinking problem? What would you do? Where would you go? There's a place, you know where it is, right? AA, right? What happens in AA? What's the benefit of AA? Well, there's companionship, there's sympathy, there's empathy, because there are people who understand your problem. There's support. There are people who are there to say, hang on, you're falling off the wagon, or on the wagon, I never can remember which one it is, but you're losing focus and you're being tempted again to get back into alcoholism. I'm here to support you and to tell you to stop. I'm here to tell you, man, I'm here for you. It's a group. We all know it's a famous group. What about something more banal, something more simple, like, trying to save money by, getting to work, driving to work, what do? We carpool, right? What about simple things like, and I was thinking also about another group that really struck my mind, were the quilting bees of the 19th and 18th century in America. Women who would get together over the winter would collect scraps of throwaway fabric from a worn-out suit or from a worn-out piece of cloth from somewhere. And collect these bits and bobs. And in the summertime, join together in a collective and create these quilting bees, right? And socialize and share gossip. This was common with black women in the South. It was common with white women in the Midwest during the frontier days. They joined together, the families would join together from all over the county. The men would have their time together socializing, sharing information about crops, information about planting. The children would play and catch up. And the women would sit around and build and make and construct these quilts. Quilts that, made by themselves, could take months. But together, they would make 10 and 15 quilts in a day. Okay? It's this simple idea. As a matter of fact, I was hoping to, before this talk, to go out and find a bunch of twigs out on the side of the road and show you how simple it is to break one, and then put about 10 or 15 together and try to break those and show you that there's power in numbers. Power in numbers. Joining a group. What if, for example, I'm going to take you guys, some of you students there, some of you on the telephone, I don't really appreciate that. Sir, would you mind not being on this phone while I'm talking, young man? Not being on the phone while I'm talking. See, you can tell I'm a professor, right? But what if I were to take these 5 or 6 young people right here and have them join in a group and say your purpose is to find a way to find your way to college? What if that was your goal? Now, in a group, you know, because we've all been in different groups, there's going to be the bossy, loud, sassy one who wants all the attention. It's just the nature of groups. And then there's going to be a quiet one who doesn't really say much, but still waters run deep, right? They may have special skills and talents that no one's really drawn out of them before. And then there's going to be someone else who maybe simply loves to like cook and support and make refreshments and whatnot for everybody. And someone else who has incredible contacts. He knows this attorney here, works with this attorney, does his law. Everybody has different things that they bring to an organization. And the next thing you know, that you've got a group of people who bring their talents together, that all of a sudden, there's use for them. There's value. The loud, bossy one who annoys everybody all of a sudden comes into great value when it's time for your group to show up somewhere and in an angry, activist way say, we want to be heard. And then the dean of the school or the newspaper editor or whoever says, okay, well, you want to be heard? Let's hear what you have to say. And everyone kind of looks around like, I don't know what to say. And the loud bossy one steps up and says, I'm representing our group and I have something to say. We have something to say. That person had a purpose. I'm sure you know what that's like growing up in the media. You were probably that young lady.
Really, I wasn't. I was quiet and shy.
Okay, well, see, things change. But the thing is that when we come together, the whole point is the reason why we're even here is because of our struggle, because of our centuries-old struggle is why we're here. The disadvantages. And how did we get here? Dividing us, conquering us, dividing us and conquering us. That's how they did it. So the antidote, the obvious answer, is to come back together again. Be those 10 or 20 sticks that can't be broken. Be that group that has multiple talents. Go out and find a way, put a group together of elderly people, if that's what your group is. Look for the commonality. If you're a felon and you feel lost and alone and nobody cares, maybe there's other people out there who have felonies as well that you need to sit and talk to. 2 people together with an idea can be 10 times more powerful than one person. Not twice as powerful, but 10 times more powerful. 3 people together. AA, as a matter of fact, was created by 2 men who were alcoholics who happened to run into each other and were looking for help. They were looking for someone to talk to who understood their problem and who didn't want to drink again. This happened back in the 1930s. And by finding each other, they said, one of them said, okay, I'll talk to you for 15 minutes, and that's all the time I have. 6 hours later, the gentleman who was trying to find someone to talk to so that he wouldn't drink again, never touched a drop of drink in his life again. They went and started this program in a hospital, and they made their next patient, their next friend or AA person, they created 3. And those 3 men became the foundation of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's a success story. And we all know that it's a success story. And it came from like-minded people coming together with a common cause, building a team. A team, not an individual. Why would you want to do something by yourself? Let's just say you have some musical talent. Okay? You're going to make it in the business without maybe bandmates, a producer. Okay, you're an MC. You don't need a DJ. You don't need someone to make your beats. You don't need a lawyer, a manager, an agent, connections in the business. You think you're going to make it without any of those things? Forget it. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Teamwork, group, commonality, find common cause. We've been so divided for so long because we've been led to believe, we've been brainwashed this idea that we're inferior, that there's something wrong with us, that we can't associate with the other cat, the other person who's like us because they're just going to bring us down. Those days are over. That's over. We don't have the luxury to think like that anymore. We don't have the time to think like that anymore. And like the attorney said, we need to join together with people who are also the target of capitalistic and profit-oriented oppression. We need to join with our Latino brothers and sisters. We need to join with our poor and working class white brothers and sisters. Because let me tell you something, as much as they want to hate you, what they don't know is that when they stop doing to us, they're going to start doing to them. When they stop shooting us, they're going to start shooting them. The police, the Ku Klux Klan, all those organizations were put in place to crush the rebellion against the super rich. Did you ever wonder where the police came from, when the police were created? Did you ever wonder that? Did you ever ask yourself that question? When were the police created? Any guesses? When did we first have a police force anywhere in the world? I'll tell you. It was 1820. 1820? You mean there was no crime before 1820? There had to be crime. Why were the police only invented in the 1820s? Because in the 1820s, in England, where the first police force was created, the Industrial Revolution was coming along in full force. And they needed people from the land who would typically be growing crops and herding cattle and whatnot. They needed these people to come to the big cities, to Manchester, to Leeds, to London, and work the machines, work the factories. And when the factories needed to be shut down for whatever reason, there were a lot of people idle on the street with nothing to do. And they needed the police to keep them, to put them back to work, to keep them busy, to crush them when they tried to create unions. And when the police then came to the United States in the 1860s or 70s, it was one reason, not like what they say it is now, it was one reason and one reason only, to crush unions. And why did the 1% want to stop unions? Why? What were the unions doing? They were creating safety in the factories. The unions created the weekend. The unions created the middle class. The unions did a lot of things, and there's other things about the unions that are not so good, too, especially in regards to us. But at the end of the day, it's all about poor and working people trying to get a break, and the 1% saying, no, 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 no. And I'm going to do anything I can to keep you at each other's throats. And I just want you to understand, it's not magic. It's not, some ancient hatred towards African people. They didn't even know we existed 400, 500, 600 years ago. There's a reason why we are people at risk. There is a reason why we need to join together and team up. There's a reason, and that reason is that they will destroy us if we let them. They will divide and conquer us for one reason only, not because they hate the color of our skin or any of that, because of profits. It's money. I don't know how much time I have left. I'm kind of going off a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit about the deaf community in how it relates to all of us. I was teaching at Howard University in the 2001 through 2008, and Gallaudet, which is probably the most prestigious deaf university in the world, is right near Howard University. So we would oftentimes get deaf students who would come and take courses. And of course, since they were deaf, they had to have interpreters interpreting what I was saying to them and then interpreting whatever they were saying to me, because I didn't know ALS, ASL, American Sign Language. So I remember this one student, Ryan, who, this is a screenwriting course, and he was amazing. He was at the top of the class. I mean, he was hardworking, great imagination, really clever. And so early on, this is my first semester, funny enough, again, and he asked to have a student-teacher meeting, evaluation, to see how he was doing. And so he came down to my office, and he, with his interpreters with him, and 2 interpreters. It gets very exhausting on the shoulder when they do sign language, not their hands, but their shoulders get very tired. So they needed 2 interpreters for a 3-hour class, and you can see how much I talk. Can you imagine trying to keep up with me? So he said, how am I doing? And I said, well, considering your handicap, considering that you're deaf, and everyone else in the class is hearing, you're doing amazing. And boy, did he get angry at me. Whoa. He said, do not ever, ever call me handicapped. And I was like, well, wait a second. I mean, you're deaf, aren't you? I mean, he was born deaf. He couldn't hear not a single thing. Never spoke, only signed. And I was like, well, I'm sorry, but he said, how would you feel if I said, and then he's my student, I'm the teacher, he said, how would you feel if I called you handicapped because you're black? And I was like, whoa, now you're getting, whoa, slow down, now you're getting a little sensitive here. And he explained to me something that I want you all to understand, regardless of what community you might be part of. He said that I am not handicapped by any means whatsoever. What I do, I live a full and rich life, and I'm trying to think to myself, yeah, but you can't hear. How could you be? And he was like, and he just led me to believe. He made me understand that he was not deaf. He was not handicapped. And then it hit me, a few weeks later it hit me. The reason why he did not feel handicapped, he was not handicapped, was because he had a community of deaf people behind him. Especially at Gallaudet, which is like a seriously radical deaf school. I mean, they are intense about their pride of being deaf. They like being deaf. They don't want to learn how to speak. They don't want to learn how to read lips or anything, even though I think that's a super advantage to have. They want to live in their community. And the reason why he felt that he wasn't disadvantaged again is because he had his deaf community behind him. He had what he needed behind him, backing him up. I mean, mad backup. the deaf community, and that's an interesting thing, he took me into their world. I got to know a lot of people in the deaf community in New York, and completely, racially, completely beyond any kind of grouping. Blacks with whites, Asians with Chinese, and with blacks, and everybody mixing together. They're like, nah, we don't even see, we're deaf, and you're hearing. That's how we see our world. We don't deal with color, no, because we're so out of the mainstream, and it made me realize other than these people I've just met, I never even thought of the deaf community. I didn't even know it existed. I mean, I knew it existed, but I didn't know how they got by. How did they live? And by the way, it's very difficult, it's very challenging for them, because obviously, how many deaf people do you see working in different businesses? But the point is they have each other's back. They have each other's back. And you know why they have each other's back? For the same reason that things are going to change in the black community, and we're going to start having each other's backs. And you know what that reason is? Because we have no other choice. We have no other choice. It's going to go there. And with the way that they're shooting us in the street, and the way that the economy's going, and the way that the environment's going, and everything else in the world, we're coming to a head. Wake up. It's coming to a head. Okay? The days of hating each other and you know, the message behind gangster rap and hatred of women and hating and not respecting each other, those days are over with. If you're part of that game, you're so passé. You're over, because there's no time left. The resources are running out. The money's running out. The only chance you're going to have to survive is to join up with other people in groups. It's the only chance you're going to have. Time is of the essence. The clock is ticking. You want to survive in this 21st century, you're going to have to team up. You're going to have to team up and find like-minded people and join up and say, what can we bring to the table? What can you bring? Oh, I got this. Okay, what do you have? Oh, I got a place where we can meet. Oh, what do you have? Oh, I know this person at the newspaper. What do you have? Oh, I know the attorney who spoke. What do you have? Okay, bet. Now we're together. We got a team. Let's name it. Let's name the team. Okay, great. We're called the Black Panthers of the 28th century. Okay, what's our mission? We're going to go to college. We're all going to get degrees. We're going to find ways to elevate each other, to empower each other, to find love, to find companionship, whatever the mission is. We're going to have a mission statement. We're going to bring people in to help us. We're going to find people who are going to want to come in, because that's how things work. When people find out that you're excited and you're passionate about what you do, people come to you. They are drawn to you by magic. Call it God, call it spirituality, call it magnetism, whatever you want. But it's going to happen, because there's no more time left to play around. Now, talking about entrepreneurship and passion, because I know that we're running out of time, I want to leave you with a really interesting story about entrepreneurship, passion, college, all together in the same thing. And I hope I've given you something to think about. I hope I've given you something to kind of think, maybe there's something interesting here. Maybe life's not what it is that I see on TV. Maybe there's things about life that no one's told me, that's been right there under my nose, that I can do and succeed at. I'll give you a perfect example. I heard this story. It's an amazing story. Now, this happens to be a young man who's in college, but he's lost. He goes to classes, gets mediocre grades, but he's really not into the classes he's taking. He's really not into his major. And out of desperation, he goes to see his guidance counselor. And the guidance counselor says, well, you know, what's the problem? He says, yeah, I have this major. I don't really want to graduate. I don't see myself getting a job there. I don't know what to do. Well, what are you passionate about? He says, well, that's the problem. I'm really not passionate about anything. I don't know. I'm not really passionate about any of the things that I see. And he goes, guidance counselor was really wise, and he said, no, come on. Tell me what you're really passionate about. What do you spend time doing? The guy was kind of shy. He's a young guy. He said, well, I do have something. Well, what? Come on, tell me. He says, well, I like to play Frisbee. What? I like to play Frisbee. You know, throwing the Frisbee around. He goes, oh, okay. And he said, what are you going to tell me about? Well, you know, we have these football Frisbee teams. You know, we play, instead of throwing a football, we throw Frisbees. We get territory. We have all these different kind of games. There's other games, you know, as you probably have a guess, Frisbee's a big deal in college. And so this guidance counselor said, okay, major in Frisbee. Huh? Major in Frisbee. Okay. So he got it, and what he did was he started to organize Frisbee competitions with his name on it. He started to charge people to come and participate and to come and watch it. He was always into Frisbee, so he started designing Frisbees. And because of what he was doing, of course, the Frisbee manufacturers, the Mattels and all the different toy manufacturers, started to hear about him. And of course, because he's so interested in this, they became interested in him because they each benefit each other, right? So they started sponsoring his events. And then they picked up his patent for one of his Frisbee toys. And this young man ended up dropping out of school and becoming a millionaire. And this is basically what entrepreneurship is. Now, I'm not suggesting that you drop out of school, but I think you understand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's all kinds of things. There's in school, there's out of school, there's doing what you think you should do, what your parents want you to do, and there's doing what you want to do. There's all these different things, but the bottom line about life, and the thing that I've lived by, and I can tell you this is true, that's gotten me to this place, richer or poorer. You know, I've been up and down, as any artist will tell you. But what keeps me alive and what this energy is that you're feeling coming from me is passion. I feel passionate about art, certain things that I see. I feel passionate about certain music that I hear and about certain people who share things with me, about history. I get excited. I want to know more. You have to have that passion. You have to find what makes you excited about life. What makes you want to get up in the morning and do something that you're going to want to do for the rest of your life. And we all have it. We all have passion. It's just a matter of unlocking and finding out what that passion is. And in the end, don't let anyone ever tell you you're lazy. I remember somebody once saying, well, those people are lazy, or that guy's lazy, that's why he hasn't done this, hasn't done that. And I thought, I don't believe in that word. I don't believe in that word. It's a label, it's a way to keep people down. And then it occurred to me, you know something? Nobody's lazy in the world. You could say, oh yeah, you haven't met my cousin Eugene, you know, that guy's like so lazy. But you know why Eugene is lazy? Because he doesn't know what he wants. He doesn't know what turns him on. He doesn't know where his passion lies. And let me tell you, when he does find it, or when she finds it, whoever finds that passion, that thing that makes them feel alive, all these ideas, all these negatives of like self-destruction, drug abuse and criminality and self-hatred and feeling unable and uninspired, all those things will lift and disappear because you found out your passion.